Welcome to Collaboration and Content Sharing with ArcGIS Online. My name is Chris Whitmore. I'm a product engineer on the ArcGIS Online team.
I'm Katie. I'm a tech lead and support.
All right, so collaboration and content sharing with ArcGIS Online. There's a lot to cover here in 30 minutes, so we want to kind of weave in a couple demos and give you a strong overview, and then we'll hopefully take some questions. We're going to discuss the ArcGIS Online sharing model, and this is largely applicable to enterprise as well. The sharing model is the same. You can share content within your organization. Katie's going to do a demo. You can share content between your organizations. We're going to demo that as well, and then discuss sharing to the public and in a couple different ways you can do things like that. And then we're going to discuss some resources you can go to, whether that's blogs that have been put out that are helpful when considering sharing in general, and then also some developer resources, because everything we discuss is something that can be scripted if you're interested in it. And then also have some questions as well. Yeah. So what is the ArcGIS Online sharing model? I'm sure everybody shared something. You go to item details page, or whether it's on the Pro or whatever your app is, you click share and you're presented with something that indicates it's shared with only you, or it's shared with groups, or you can share with groups, you can share with your organization, and you can share with the public. But what does that actually mean? Well, it's really a twofold thing. First, sharing is a security model as well. That if you don't share your items, your content, ArcGIS Online, only you and the administrators or people with appropriate administrative privileges in your organization can access that item. So it's a security feature. Somebody outside of your organization cannot access content that's only within your organization and not shared publicly. And by that, you can share with your organization, so you can control who accesses it. It's not just one or the other. You can share with specific groups. You can share with your entire organization. You can share with groups from another organization as well without making your data public. So there's really kind of a diverse set of workflows you can do to kind of achieve exactly what you want without compromising security. And then the other part to the sharing model is that it's not just a security feature, it's a way of organizing data and presenting it with the thematic approach that you want, whether it's your organization's gallery, whether it's a group that you make available in your organization and make it public, and it's like it's data with a specific project or for a specific area. And you can do that publicly, you can do that between organizations, or you can do that within private groups. And access in all these cases is based on your identity in ArcGIS Online. And your identity is, like, if you have enterprise logins configured, you use your enterprise login to log into your ArcGIS organizational account. That's your identity, and that's how you're going to be accessing content in ArcGIS Online when you sign in. And you can also use we have social logins, so you can use your Gmail account, you can use your Facebook account, or you can also use ArcGIS built-in logins. And then finally, there may be cases where, that's great, you can share an app, you can share a map, and you can share all these different things, but you can also share parts of your hosted data very specifically. So you can get very, very granular in how you want individuals to access your data and to also edit your data. And we'll talk about that more here in a little bit. And with that, Katie has a demo with sharing within your organization.
So is there anyone here who hasn't used ArcGIS Online at all? Okay. So I was going to show just like generally, there's two places where you can share from. So you can share by clicking and doing share, and then you get two options. Or you can actually go to the item page itself and share from there. So if we go here, you can also share here. So the share dialog looks a little bit different from the item details page, and the groups that are available on this page are also going to be a little bit different. So I'll get into that here shortly. So let me hop back over to my content tab, and I'm going to go to groups. And so groups are a way of sharing within your organization. So if you want to just share this item with everyone who's a member of your organization, obviously you just click share, and you click your organization. So that's straightforward enough. But sometimes you might want to share with a subset of people that are within your organization, so that's where groups come in. So if we go over to the Groups tab, we can look at creating a group. with some special settings. So you want to put your group name. So in this case, I'm going to have a scenario where I have shift workers. Like let's say I have a facilities department that runs 24 hours a day. So I'm going to create a shift work group for them. Summary, tags. And so this is where it kind of gets into restricting visibility. So you can have it just for your organization, you can have it for everyone, or only people who you invite. And then also further who can join this group, so only if they're invited. So if I wanted to, in this case, just my shift workers, I'll do it to only group members. And then who can contribute content to this group. It's only really going to be me, the group manager. I don't want any of the shift workers themselves to be contributing content. In fact, they might not even own content. They might just have privileges to edit it. And then this is a really special setting for all items. We sometimes also refer to this as update capabilities. And this gives everyone who's a member of this group a very special editing privilege that basically gives them the power to edit settings that only an item owner can typically edit. So things like editing privileges on the item itself, symbology, just normally stuff that's only reserved for people who own the item. So, and then since this is a really powerful editing privilege, it actually does limit the membership only to people who are in your organization. So if you're right, yeah, I'm getting that. This setting is a setting that you can't change later. So if you enable this and then you don't want the people to have that type of elevated editing privilege, you will have to recreate the group. So go ahead and create the group. And I'm going to invite one of my members. And you can see here this, you can only search for members. It's grayed out. It won't let you search for external users, only people within your own org. So then we'll add this guy, we'll send the invitation. And then I'm going to go to my content page. And then this is the other thing about a group that has update capabilities enabled. You have to share to this group from the content page itself. You have to select it and then you have to click access and update capabilities. And then you have to share to your shift workers group. The shift workers group will not show up in the share dialog on the item details page. And that's because we want this, it's a very elevated editing privilege again, so we want the sharing of items to that group to be intentional. So I've got an item in there. Now I'm going to switch accounts to this user who I had added, who is a publisher in the org. So and then we can go to the groups tab here and see that I got to accept the invitation. Join the group. All right. So now I can see in here that here's the item that's owned by the other user. So if I go into this item and I go to settings, I can do things like disable editing. So that's something that typically only the owner would be able to do or an admin. And the user I'm signed in right now is a publisher. So again, just demonstrating the ability to share within your organization. So I think that completes the sharing within the organizations if we want to. Oh, between organizations. Yeah, so now we're going to have the concept of sharing between two organizations. So I'm going to go ahead and create another group. So let's say you are like an emergency management organization and there's an emergency going on, you need to collaborate with another group, but you're not within the same ArcGIS Online organization. So you can do something, you can create another group here. Oops, sorry. and we will create a merge. Sorry, I'm not too creative with so we'll go ahead and create, oh, you know what, I need to switch back. Sorry, my bad here. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll make this group public, and then, actually I'll make it only group members. And then who can contribute content to the group members, they can only edit their own items, and we'll go ahead and create this group. And then now what I can do is I can invite a user from another organization. So an important concept to have here is the concept of the visibility of a user's profile. So if you look in a profile here, you can see who can see your profile. So this is set to public right now, but some people might have their profile set to only their organization or private. So that has an effect on inviting an external user, and when I say external, not a member of your organization, but a member of another organization, in that you have to invite them specifically by their username. So I have a user in another org, so, and this is my username, so I specifically have to type in that, and I have to uncheck this to get the user. And that's again because my profile is marked as private. So then I go ahead and send this invitation. And if I hop over to, it might be this one. And I refresh the page. I can now join this group. And I'll see it in my groups tab, even though this is a completely different organization. And so that's a way to collaborate privately between two separate organizations. And then the other option to collaborate between two organizations is if you have a bunch of content that you can share publicly, you can always create a group, a public group. Sorry, let me find it here. So for example, I just searched demographic groups, and there's this Living Atlas group. That's a public group that has all the content from our Living Atlas about demographics. And the good thing about this, when you create a public group, you get the ability to get a link to this group. So if someone's asking you, hey, where's all of our parks data, and you have a public group, then you can just send them the link to this group.
All right, cool. Thanks, Katie. All right, so that was sharing within the organization. That was sharing between organizations. And now the next step is sharing to the public. So really, it's the same exact thing that Katie just showed in both instances, in the sense that you can have a shared update group and you have internal editors managing the content in that group. That content can still be shared publicly. And if it's like the shift workers map, that where they're updating the map around the clock, and maybe that's in a public web app builder app with wildfire perimeters or something like that, it lends itself well to all the workflows we discussed. Can also be applied to sharing to the public. And you can then do further things like if you have a hub site with your organization, is that you can then take the group that Katie just showed you with the settings, and you can enable your group for open data. But what really wanted to demo here was making your data itself public. So we've been kind of talking about content abstractly. It could be anything, but I want to talk about actually a hosted feature layer specifically. So you publish your data, and you want to make the data public, but maybe all the data doesn't need to be public. Maybe some of it's sensitive, maybe some of it is stuff that really the public doesn't need to know, in the sense of it confuses the story you're trying to tell with your layers and your map and your apps. So there are a few things you can do. You can create a view of that hosted layer, of your primary feature layer. Which that does is it references the same data, but allows differing controls. So you could have an internal layer that's only available for editing, or you can also have a public layer that's read-only, or a public layer that only allows features to be added. Users don't actually have access to the full data, and that's what I want to show you right here. So I have a hosted feature layer of power outage areas in California. Now this layer has too much information for users. I don't need all this. Really, the main thing. Oh shoot! Again. Aha. All right. Sorry. All right. So this layer has a lot of data that is not really necessary for users to get. In this case, maybe not sensitive, but a lot of it really doesn't make sense. So maybe you only want to have cause and stuff like that made available. So you can create a feature layer view which references the same data but allows you to do different things like hide specific fields, hide attributes based on a certain value. Like if you only wanted to show a certain county or something like that, you can do that by setting a view definition. This right now is symbolized by outages by the number of customers impacted. And I'm going to define features. I could say any number here, creation date. Maybe old ones shouldn't be shown, so maybe ones before March 1st. And if I applied that, outages before March 1st when it show, maybe I want to, like I was mentioning a minute ago, to only show certain fields. So I could hide all these fields and then only leave cause, impacted number of customers, and estimated return date. And you can also clean up these fields here to actually have meaningful aliases that somebody could come to and be like, oh, estimated return date, or estimated time of power. I understand that. And these are security features, meaning there's no way for somebody to get around it and actually be able to retrieve the data. Only the people you share it with can access the data in this manner. And you could also define an area of interest if you only wanted Northern California, for example. So you could really leverage these to only show and only share with the public the specific data that you want them to see without having to publish multiple layers, without having to jump through a lot of hoops. It's really a straightforward workflow. And then the next thing I want to cover with this is that, so that's access to your data. You're making your data available. But oftentimes that you actually want to collect data from the public, but you don't want the public to also corrupt your data, whether that's graffiti type postings or whether that's just something that's really, they don't need to see other people's edits. So I have my feature layer view that I've already hidden some of the fields and I've defined an area for it, but I also want to have this to be able to report outages as well. And maybe in this case, it's probably better that I create a separate view that's separate from the one that I would have in a dashboard or in a public web app builder app that users are actually engaging with. Maybe this one is in a separate app for reporting outages. And so all I want users to do is to report an outage. And maybe this is in a Survey 123 or it's in a web app builder app, but I only want them to be able to add features. I don't want them to be able to update existing features. That's what my QA and QC team does internally. And I don't want them to delete features. Again, that's what my internal team does. So you could enable add features only. And then you can also enable editors can't see any features, even those they add. And what that means then is that I submit a feature, I report an outage, I can't even see that feature anymore. So you can't, as you're collecting data, anonymous users out in the field, the general public, can't actually see what outages are being reported until it's actually gone through your QA and QC, so that spurious outages aren't being reported, that you actually know, you verify, and then you can add in whatever data you need. So There's a lot to really unpack there, but that's a quick dive into feature layer views and configuring these things that actually have, only the data you want to make available to the public. And that applies to the cases that Katie talked about too, whether it's sharing internally, maybe you have contract workers you've onboarded and you only want them to have a subset of data, or maybe it's your overall organization users only, they don't need to access the full data, only some users do, but you still need to make some data available public to them. All right, so that said, I want to show you really quickly a couple features that are coming up in the ArcGIS Online release here in a couple weeks. First, this page should look familiar. It's the group settings tab that Katie was showing a few minutes ago. And so this is all the stuff she discussed, but the next thing that we're introducing is displaying only a certain type of item. This is a request we hear. It's like, I put my app in a group. That meant I had to put my app in the same group, and I shared my layers with the group. But I only want the people that I've directed to actually go to this group or join this group to be able to see the app. They don't need to work with the layer. I want them to work through the focus experience that I provided for them. So in this case, I could select apps, and the default view of that group would then only show apps. The maps and layers and other content are now no longer available by default. And that's what I've applied here. And you see that I have some content here. And these are all applications. These are all viewers and explorers that I put together. And they're all powered by feature layers and web maps, but you don't see them here. They're all shared with the group. And further, you can get the expanded content, and you see the 4 apps. And there's an apps filter applied. Now, you can remove the apps filter, and now you start seeing my web maps. And then I have layers in here somewhere, I believe. And then you could even then further categorize your content in your group, which this is an existing thing. I shouldn't confuse it. All right, and so the next thing I want to show you real quick is in the upcoming release, we are introducing the ability to be able to create your own thumbnail. And so this is the item details page for a web map, in this case, the Palm Springs Trails map. And I want to create a new thumbnail because the one that I have is not that great. So what this does is actually loading the map, and you can pan and zoom, and you can do things like change the base map. And while the streets night base map doesn't look good here, I'll go with it for the time being, and then maybe I want to zoom out to get Palm Springs. Click OK, and my thumbnail has been updated. So this has been a feature that's really been asked for a while, but it's really nice to be able to generate your own thumbnail without having to jump through a lot of hoops.
Especially for public content. It's good to have a nice thumbnail.
Yes, sir. Yeah, coming up in there in 2 weeks or so. All right, so we discussed sharing with ArcGIS Online. We'd also be remiss not to mention sharing data for enterprise. And this is the hybrid case where you have an enterprise environment, and you also want to make some data available in ArcGIS Online. Well, we've introduced in the past year a new capability called collaborations. And what essentially is, you establish a collaboration between ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Online. And you can set up the data that you want to be made available on ArcGIS Online, along with other contents like web maps and things like that. And then you can set up a pulse on whenever the data will be synced to ArcGIS Online. And it's really a way of getting your data in online to be shared publicly and leverage the full ability of what ArcGIS Online offers versus Enterprise, while still maintaining your enterprise data store with on-prem. Currently, the replication, the syncing is only one way. It's only from Enterprise to ArcGIS Online, but this is an active area that will be evolving over time to eventually include a collaboration of sorts between ArcGIS Online organizations. And I think you guys will be getting these slides. Here's some great blog posts from sharing content privately to using groups effectively, and just in general, tips and tricks for working with sharing in ArcGIS Online. And then also the doc links, and like I mentioned early on, that everything we discussed, it's all scriptable and programmable through the REST API. We have links to the doc as well. All right, and with that said, I think we have a few minutes. Any questions? Yes, sir. So the question is using the feature layer views and time series data. Yeah, so you can set up a definition expression to through the filter that I showed you, like when we're working with the attributes. You can set something up with a date field where it says like in the last 7 days. So like if you have some inspections coming due, you can really focus that on like, hey, these are last week of inspections that are coming up, and while still having the full data set behind the scenes that is no longer accessible to whoever you don't share it with.